My name is Cayce James, and I work at the City of Seattle at the Office of Planning and Community Development. And I have been doing work that focuses on the South Park neighborhood for about 5 years.
My name's Squires. I live in South Seattle and I work at a place called Nelson Nygaard, and we're multimodal transportation planners. So I'm a consultant and I'm helping Cayce with the Reconnect South Park project. We're leading the technical assistance team, so a group of mobility planners, landscape architects, designers to re-envision what 99 could be through South Park.
So I've been working on projects in South Park for about 5 years, supporting different environmental justice initiatives, working directly with the community, and then trying to help amplify community priorities within the government.
I don't live in South Park, but I've been working here since we started this project. I live in South Seattle, so I've done a lot of advocacy work over in the Rainier Valley. And so I often come to South Park to eat good food and hang out with great people, and so love this neighborhood.
I really love getting to spend time in South Park, and I have a ton of admiration for the different community leaders and organizers that I get to work with here. To me, it feels like there's always something really exciting happening here, and I think that's due to all this just tremendous amount of energy and care that people are constantly pouring into the neighborhood, and it just makes it a really, really special place.
Yeah, similarly for me too. South Park is this incredibly resilient and robust and lively neighborhood, despite having a freeway running through it and experiencing other kind of environmental injustices over time with pollution of the Duwamish and all of these things that make life here hard. There is a resilient community and people that celebrate life in this place and life together that I'm really honored to support. And so I love coming here just as a participant in the many festivals and events and patronizing businesses, and it's an honor to have my work life line up with this, to be able to support the local community organizing as a consultant and as a technical assistance supporter.
So I've been supporting the Reconnect South Park work for a few years, and in that time I've spent a lot of time just looking at the highway, looking at its placement, trying to understand its history. And one thing that's become really clear to me through that work is just this highway was built to cut through rather than to serve South Park, just in the way that it was designed. And urban highways in general can cause a lot of problems for the neighborhoods around them. All highways produce a lot of air pollution, which can cause a lot of health problems for anyone that lives within 500 meters of them. So asthma and cardiovascular disease, depression, cancer, lots of different issues. Most highways also, make it harder for people to walk or bike around their neighborhood. They divide communities. But most highways in Seattle were built in ways that sort of minimize some of those negative impacts, right? So they're maybe placed adjacent to a steep slope, so there aren't other houses around, so some of the air pollution isn't impacting people as much. Or when they do cut through a neighborhood, often they cut through in a way that sort of aligns with the existing neighborhood street grid. But in South Park, that's not the case at all, right? The highway just was built to cut through at a diagonal in a way that didn't respond to the street grid at all, and created 22 different dead-end streets when it was built. And now there's just one on-grade crossing point for the entire 1.5-mile stretch of highway. And I think there's a lot of different reasons why that's true. But one thing is, if we look back into the history, South Park was redlined in 1936, which was a practice at that time that denied home loans, mortgages, mostly to communities of color across the United States. And it was very explicitly racist in its practice. And after South Park got that designation, it was true here and for a lot of different communities around the country that highways were designed in the 50s and 60s to intentionally divide or displace redline communities. And in South Park, there's actually a plan. City planners intended to displace the entire neighborhood and rezone the neighborhood to industrial. And the neighborhood fought back against that. Residents protested and were able to reverse the decision, and that's how South Park remains a residential neighborhood today. And at the time, they also protested the highway, but were obviously unsuccessful in that. The only concessions that were given for those protests were the overpass at Henderson and a little bit more of the community center was preserved. They were planning to cut through more of it with an on-ramp. So you can sort of see that legacy here today, and a lot of it is tied to sort of patterns of injustice that we saw pretty commonly in the past.
Yeah. Reconnect South Park, to me, is a community-led initiative and effort that the city and consulting partners are supporting the community's vision for how 99 could serve the neighborhood, or how it could be re-envisioned to better serve the neighborhood. Everything that Cayce is saying around the way that the highway disconnects, the way that the highway emits pollution, the way that the highway attracts fast-moving big truck traffic into and through the neighborhood. What are the alternatives? What are the potential futures for how this asset, this transportation asset that mostly serves to connect I-5 to industrial areas, how can actually that space be used to support the neighborhood that is around it? And so thinking about the different kind of assets and the destinations around and within South Park, we're sitting at the library. There's Concord Elementary is on one side of the highway, and then the library, the community center, are on the other side. Students have to walk across sweeping highway on-ramps just to get to school. They have to walk along isolated trail right next to the freeway to try to get to school. What would it look like if those connections across the highway were safer, were more welcoming, that the spaces near the highway were more vibrant? So I think Reconnect South Park is all about envisioning potential futures in line with the variety of community desires and objectives and priorities that the South Park community has expressed over time. And I think looking at how this highway, this transportation asset, how not only we can right the decisions of the past or repair the harm that was done by the construction of the highway, but how can we use that space and re-envision that asset to amplify and stabilize and celebrate the community that it should serve.
Right. And going on to
My hope for the future of South Park is that a lot of these, current environmental burdens and inequities have been addressed, and that future generations can grow up here and get to, be able to breathe clean air and have safe streets to, walk to bike to their friend's house on, or just have a lot of these, have green spaces around that they can go play in. A lot of things that people in other places in Seattle sort of consider the norm or expectation today. Mm-hmm. My role, I think, as, I don't live in South Park. I'm trying to support this work from the government side, and I think as part of that role, I'm trying to, help create a process where people that live and work here can come together and co-create a vision for what they would like to see in the future. And then my job will be to take that vision and bring it to decision makers and policy makers to help implement it. So my hope for the future is that the community that was really denied agency in the original construction of the highway will really be able to be in charge of deciding what that future looks like.
Same for me too. We're here to support the people that do live and work and have their families and go to church and organize for this neighborhood, that their vision would be achieved through whatever the future of the highway is. That it's a wonderful opportunity to think about how people can be active daily, have access to healthy food, be able to have viable, affordable transportation options like walking to their friend's house or biking to school, or being able to take the bus to a different neighborhood and have that be reliable. Just thinking of all of the things that Cayce said are normal in a lot of different neighborhoods where you easily have access to opportunities. You easily have access to your people. They're not being displaced or having the pressures of displacement. But how can we think of this space and this facility that has kind of amplified a lot of burdens? How can you release that burden, and how can you open up that space for more elevation of the community, their priorities, especially those that have lived here for a long time, and potentially creating opportunities for those that have been displaced to be able to come back?